We've reached the end of the Beatitudes, but we're going to read it one more time. So I would like you to get out your message guide, the green sheet, and the side that says Matthew 5, 1 through 12. And I'm hoping that at least some of it has been committed to memory through this process of reading and rereading. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." It had been a disappointing day, and Arnie was having one of those after-work drive-home conversations with God. God, this doesn't make any sense. I was a shoo-in for the promotion, but then my group leader said I'd gone soft. I'm not soft just because I care about how our investments will impact the poor. I know that's important to you. So how is it, God, that when I'm acting on your agenda, it all blows up in my face? I thought that following you was supposed to make life go more smoothly. How can it be that when I'm doing the right thing, so much wrong happens to me? Now, this is not a new challenge, of course. That's why Jesus, as he wraps up this poetic introduction to the Sermon on the Mount, what we call the Beatitudes, he lands the poem with a blessing on those who are persecuted because they are doing the right things. The very things that he is spelling out in the Beatitudes, the very things that he's going to continue to unpack throughout the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. And then to reinforce his point in verse 10, he adds a bit of commentary. Notice none of the other Beatitudes have commentary after them, but this is the one Beatitude where he adds a commentary to it. And Eugene Peterson's Message translation of verses 10 through 12 really captures the essence of the conversation at this point. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit you. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort and they are uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even, for though they don't like it, I do, and all heaven applauds. You know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. It's that last line that really grabbed me. This kind of trouble. Has there ever been a time in your own life when faithfulness to God has not annoyed someone? Or has there ever been a time in history when faithfulness to God has not annoyed at least someone? Why are you surprised then when you are hassled because you're living out the kingdom of heaven? Did you assume that following Jesus was going to magically transport you into this world where all of your problems were going to go away? That's never been the case. Consider the instance of Joseph as he resisted the propositions of Mrs. Potiphar. Where did that land in? Prison. Or what about Moses as he answered the call to lead his people out of Egypt? He caught flack from both sides, didn't he? Pharaoh was trying to kill him while his own people were mutiny. Or what about John the Baptist? His head ended up on a plate. Or Jesus, who was lashed to the cross by the sin of the world. When you draw pushback because of Jesus, receive it as a blessing rather than as a curse. That's the key point this morning. When you draw pushback because of Jesus, receive it as a blessing rather than a curse. And by the way, pushback is the English power word this week. It is a good word to add to your vocabulary. Pushback is opposition or resistance. It is an unfavorable response. When you draw pushback because of Jesus, receive it as a blessing rather than as a curse. Let's look a little more closely at verses 10 through 12. I want to point out a few things about the text and make a few observations that I think will be an encouragement to us. And the first thing that I want you to note is that it's not about you, but the kingdom of heaven. It's not about you, but the kingdom of heaven. Notice that the Beatitudes are arranged poetically as 8 couplets. The first line in each of the couplets starts out as what? Blessed are, right? Then the second line of each couplet describes the blessing. In verse 3, which is the first of the couplets, it's blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So the second line of that couplet is what? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven, right? Now notice how similar this first beatitude or couplet is to the last, or the 8th couplet, the 8th beatitude. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The second line in each of these 2 couplets is identical. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The first couplet and the second couplet, the first of the Beatitudes and the last of the Beatitudes are forming this kind of package. This is a fancy literary device which forms a sandwich into which all of the other Beatitudes are layered. They are positioned. That is, this poem, based upon the pieces of the sandwich, are all about the kingdom of heaven. Everything in it is about the kingdom of heaven. That is, don't look at the individual components without understanding that they are all dimensions of life in God's kingdom. The kingdom that is headquartered in heaven. So when people push back against you because you're living out the kingdom, the message is don't take it personally. It's not really about you, but it's about God and His kingdom. Yes, they might be rejecting you, but more so they are rejecting God and His kingdom. Number 2, while some people are rejecting God and His kingdom, when you experience that rejection, you are becoming more fully established in His kingdom. When you experience that rejection, you are becoming more fully established in His kingdom. Again, here's Eugene Peterson's very solid rendering of verse 10. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Now, we're not saying that we should go out and look for ways to get persecuted. I mean, there's some people that really want to be persecuted, and they're always looking for ways to be victims. But that's not what it's saying here. Rather that there is growth that happens when we follow Jesus, even to the cross. We start to better understand that our life in Christ is rooted in His sacrifice, and it is rooted in His suffering. And if we're following Him through the sacrifice, and we're following Him through the suffering as well as the glory of the resurrection. And the only way that we grow deeper in Jesus is if we take up His cross and follow Him. As Matthew 16, 24 to 26 reminds us that Jesus said to His disciples, "All who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. And all who want to save their lives will lose them, but all who lose their lives because of me will find them. Why would people gain the whole world but lose their lives? What will people give in exchange for their lives? So it begs the question, are you willing to embrace the suffering? Are you willing to carry it? Are you willing to follow Jesus and into his kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, into his agenda, even when it means that it ruins your ideal life of comfort and leisure? Are you willing to move outside of your comfort zone? Number 3, suffering people can be happy people. Suffering people can be happy. Verse 11. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Then notice verse 12. Rejoice and be glad. Rejoice and be glad. Rejoice and be glad because you're in prison. Rejoice and be glad because you just lost your job. Rejoice and be glad because people are spreading lies about you. Well, one of the byproducts of suffering is that we learn that joy and happiness isn't tied to comfort and success. You can rejoice even through the nonsense being thrown at you because your peace and your well-being is rooted in God's love and it's rooted in God's acceptance. In Acts 16, Paul and his sidekick Silas were attacked by a mob in Philippi. It says, Luke describes, it says they were beaten by a rod and they were stripped of their clothes and they were tossed into the local poker. Then along about midnight, while they were in that dark and dank dungeon, they started singing praise songs. Suffering people can be happy people. Number 4, pushback means that our rewards are issued from heaven rather than the world system. Pushback means that our rewards are issued from heaven rather than the world system. We've all been watching the athletes at the Olympics receive their rewards, the medals that they've been receiving. We get excited when our paychecks grow in recognition of our contributions to the company's success. Some of us are receiving our rewards from catching pinchy and caterpie and collecting all those eggs that will eventually hatch into Pokemon. That's great as long as you're not living for Pokemon rewards or paychecks or Olympic medals. Rejoice and be glad because great is your reward in heaven. Rewards are recognition. Are you living for games and money or for the recognition that comes from heaven? The recognition that says, well done, my good and faithful servant. What kind of rewards are you living for? Rewards drawn on the bank of heaven or rewards issued through the world system? Number 5, when you experience pushback because of Jesus, you're in really good company. When you experience pushback because of Jesus, you're in really good company. Rejoice and be glad because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you, or as Peterson put it, my prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. The other day at the pastor's cluster, the pastor's meeting, Pastor Simon, who's been here with us, visited with us before on Sunday morning, who is from our South Sudanese congregation, he was giving a report about his recent visit to Ethiopia. He's a part of the Nuer tribe, and the Nuer tribe transcends the political borders, so many of them live in South Sudan, and some of the tribe lives on the Ethiopian side of the border. And he was visiting his father and his family. He's an American citizen, but he went back and he was visiting his father and family in a village near South Sudan, but in Ethiopia, when raiders had crossed the border from South Sudan and had attacked their group, their village, their clan, at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And he said he joined with the other men in the village in chasing off the attackers. But there were about 120 people killed in the attack on his family, on his village, on his people. Many of them, by the way, were from the South Sudanese Covenant Church, the ones that died. Simon had just finished telling a story when we got a message that he got a message on his phone saying you need to leave right away, help somebody from his church. So we prayed for him and we sent him on his way, and after he walked out the door, we all just kind of looked at each other because we were supposed to be talking about our problems, our issues, and we said, so much for our first world problems. I got an email the other day from SAT, S-A-T, which provides Christian television programming in the Middle East, and they reported about a mob of 300 men incited by radicals who had attacked the homes of Coptic Christians in the Minya district of Upper Egypt. And the attack occurred after rumors had spread that a church was under construction. And homes were set on fire. Then it said in the story that they took the children, the Christian children, and threw them into the fires. This guy. But the fact is that we're not alone when we are attacked. God respecters have been under attack for thousands of years. Prophets and evangelists and preachers and ordinary believers, many have died. And there is no sign that things are easing up. You are not alone when it comes to harassment. Number 6. When we experience pushback because of Jesus, our response is love. When we receive pushback because of Jesus, our response is love. The reality of suffering frames Jesus' words later in the sermon. Further down, if you keep reading past the Beatitudes in chapter 5, Matthew 5, Jesus tells his people that they are to skip retaliating. They don't engage in retaliation. And then he says, love your enemies. These are not just video game enemies, but they're the real thing. The real people, they hurt people, they kill people. And Jesus says, love them. Love those enemies. You've heard that it was said, you must love your neighbor and hate your enemy, Matthew 5:44, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who harass you, so that you will be acting as children of your Father who is in heaven. The fact is, though, that is a lot easier said than done. It will be a struggle, but the point that is being made here is that it is a doable struggle if you look at pushback, if you look at the suffering, if you look at the persecution as a blessing rather than as a curse. When you draw pushback because of Jesus, receive it as a blessing rather than as a curse. I get kind of tired of some of the prominent evangelical voices in the U.S. who whine about being persecuted because somebody has publicly disrespected their opinions. We become whiners without any real understanding of history or what is happening in the rest of the world. Yes, there is pushback of various sorts at times. So don't be surprised when it happens. But instead of whining about how much of a curse it is, we turn it around and we receive it as a blessing. At least if we're following Jesus on this matter. And that is good news.